So we have some major news in a challenge against the ATF's pistol brace rule. The Trump DOJ just agreed to drop their Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals case, that is the mock lawsuit, meaning that the prior decision striking down the pistol brace rule nationwide will now stand. This is a significant win, so we need to talk about what is happening. Now, before we jump into this video, I want to thank one of our main supporters and sponsors of this channel, which is Attorneys on Retainer. When it comes to protecting yourself after a self-defense incident, AOR is in a league of their own. AOR is an actual law firm, so they can help you in situations and self-defense incidents that maybe other companies would not. For example, AOR recently defended one of their members in the state of New York where, other companies can't actually operate. So AOR is an amazing company. I highly recommend that you guys check them out. They added a ton of new benefits with no extra cost to you if you sign up this year. And if you sign up using my code ARMEDSCHOLAR, you can get $50 off of your individual sign-up plan or $25 off of a family plan. As I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we have some important news in the battle against the ATF and their current restrictions on all braced pistols as SBRs. The Trump DOJ just stipulated to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that they have agreed with the plaintiffs in the mock lawsuit to drop the active appeal on the whole pistol brace issue. This notice states that pursuant to the Federal Rule of Appellate Procedure 42B1, the parties hereby stipulate to the dismissal of this appeal. With all parties to bear their own costs, plaintiffs retain the right to seek attorney's fees in the district court, including attorney's fees incurred on appeal. So although this case hasn't been abandoned at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals level, we need to talk about some of the procedure of what happened in this case down below. What was the decision down below, and how does that impact this issue going forward? And also, how does this impact what happens maybe in 4 years when an anti-gun administration takes control of the president's office, and then, also takes control of the ATF, the DOJ, and all of that. Now, this all stems primarily from a decision from Judge Reed O'Connor in a federal district court in Texas, where he issued a final merits decision in the mock lawsuit, striking down the ATF pistol brace rule completely on the final merits. Now, in his decision, Judge O'Connor stated that at the conclusion of the majority's careful analysis, they held that the final rule is properly characterized as a legislative rule, and that it is relatively straightforward that the final rule was not a logical outgrowth from the proposed rule. Therefore, the final rule must be set aside as unlawful or otherwise remanded for appropriate remediation. Now, it's important to note that that decision by Judge O'Connor was primarily based on the APA, also known as the Administrative Procedures Act, and something known as the logical outgrowth test. Essentially, Judge O'Connor found that the ATF, the Biden administration, did not follow the APA's procedural rules when they implemented the pistol brace rule. Now, the main issue with that is there was the worksheet 4999, which had a point system where you would look at how your braced pistol was configured, and there were certain points that you would get based on characteristics, and if your points added up to a certain number, well, then it was classified as an SBR or a short-barreled rifle. Essentially, with the proposed rule, they had that system in place. We all commented against that during the commenting period. And then essentially what happened is in the final rule, they scrapped the worksheet 4999 and then went to a more vague, subjective standard about how they would classify certain braced pistols as SBRs. And that, scrapping of the worksheet and moving to a more subjective standard is what Judge O'Connor found an issue with and found that it violated the APA and the logical outgrowth test. So that's why the rule was struck down in Judge O'Connor's court. It was not based on the Second Amendment or anything like that. It was more based on some procedural issues with the APA. That's going to be important for, what happens also going forward, maybe when a new administration gets control of the office and maybe also control of the ATF, and what do they do going forward. Now, you may be asking in practice, what does this mean for pistol braces going forward? So first and foremost, this notice only indicates that they are dropping this appeal in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. In practice, what will now happen is the case is going to go back down to Judge Reed O'Connor in the district court, and he's going to issue his final mandate or order on the whole nationwide vacature of the pistol brace rule and then close the case. It's also important to note that the nationwide vacature of the pistol brace rule by Judge O'Connor has been in place this whole time, even during the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, appeal there. And so that's been in place. And also there are multiple preliminary injunctions which are protecting various 2A organizations and their members. So Judge O'Connor's prior nationwide vacature will now go into full effect, and the ATF will concede that the pistol brace rule as it was put in place by the Biden ATF that it's now vacated. Now, there's other lawsuits still out there. There's other lawsuits than just this mock challenge. We have multiple also in the federal district courts in Texas. You have the GOA case, the NAGR case, the Brito challenge, which the Brito case also got a nationwide preliminary injunction, I believe, which also now is kind of invalid because of the Supreme Court's recent decisions on universal injunctions. But there's other lawsuits as well out there dealing with the whole ATF pistol brace issue. Many of those were preliminary injunctions cases. They were at a preliminary injunction stage, but they were placed on hold to see how the Fifth Circuit would actually handle this pistol brace appeal in the mock challenge. However, now with this appeal being dropped, those cases will likely be opened up and resolved in favor of the plaintiffs in light of this new mock, development. In essence, the pistol brace rule that was put in place by the Biden ATF will now be struck down completely, based on, the Judge O'Connor nationwide vacature that he issued prior. I would suspect that a lot of these other district courts, if they see that the Trump DOJ is not contesting this anymore, they're probably just going to resolve those in favor of those plaintiffs. Now, there's a couple wrinkles to all of this that I also want to point out. First, like we saw with the whole FRT settlement, also in the Fifth Circuit, there is a chance that you have some anti-gun groups like Giffords in Everytown who may try to pick up, that torch and run these cases and, go against these companies and try to hold them liable, maybe if they are selling pistol braces. Despite the settlement that we saw in that whole FRT case, we saw anti-gun groups still go after those companies and try to stop that win that we got. Another thing that I want to note is kind of the long game implications of what just happened in this case and with the whole decision. This whole, development that you have the Trump DOJ agreeing to drop the appeal and the plaintiffs here also agreeing to drop this case. By agreeing with the Trump DOJ to drop the appeal, you kind of get that immediate win and you kind of end the pistol brace rule here and now, but you also kind of lose the opportunity to get a larger, more impactful final merits win in a higher court of appeal. Here would be the Fifth Circuit. Remember, this mock case was only ruled on by the district court judge, Judge Reed O'Connor. If another anti-gun administration comes into office and they decide to take another crack at a pistol brace rule, the only precedent that you actually have on the final merits is a district court in a federal district court in Texas in this mock ruling. That ruling is not necessarily binding on other jurisdictions and is only persuasive at best on other jurisdictions. Now, if another administration tries to put in place a new pistol brace rule, if they take another crack at a pistol brace rule, it could also potentially look different, or they could also try to do the same exact rule. Now, that might sound kind of weird. Why would they do the same exact rule if that was just struck down by Judge Reed O'Connor and just conceded by the Trump DOJ? Well, remember, like I mentioned earlier in this video, that Judge Reed O'Connor decision only struck down the ATF brace rule based on some procedural errors with the APA and it not meeting the logical outgrowth test. The big sticking point was that the proposed rule had that worksheet 4999, had that whole point system, and then that was scrapped with the final rule. So in essence, another administration that is anti-gun could take another crack at putting in place a pistol brace rule in the same exact form. And as long as they follow the APA's procedural requirements, they could kind of get over the precedent that was there in place, in the Judge O'Connor decision, because it would look different. That's why I'm saying this is an immediate win, but there is still kind of an opening there that's left by this decision to, agree to stop the appeal and not move forward anymore. It kind of leaves an opening for later anti-gun administrations to try to go after pistol braces again if they want. Now, of course, if they try to implement a new rule, that would take some time. They would have to go through the proposed rule, a commenting period, finalizing the rule, all of that. So it would take some time. But again, this kind of leaves an opening for future administrations if they're anti-gun and if they want to target pistol braces. But still, for now, that's what the Trump DOJ and the plaintiffs here decided to do. They decided to kind of settle this case and, allow that appeal to no longer, move forward. And in practice, this is a win for everyone who wants to own, pistol braces. If you already have a pistol brace and you want to configure those, now you know that the Trump DOJ is not going to move forward with this lawsuit and that nationwide vacature by Judge O'Connor is going to stand. So that's the win we just got in this critical pistol brace challenge. Now we're simply going to wait to see, how Judge O'Connor, issues his order, when does the nationwide vacature fully go into effect? And then also, what happens with all these other lawsuits going forward and how are they going to be resolved? So again, a good win, but I wanted to kind of give you guys a full overview of what this, really does and what are the broader reaching implications. So As we get more information, as this unravels more, I will let you guys know. If you want to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to subscribe to the channel. Also, you can check out my website, armedscholar.com, where we have the free legal guide that you can sign up for. All you have to do is put in your email. And then also we have some daily deals you can check out to save some money. But as always, thank you guys so much for all of your support. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.